cherry tomatoes are probably one of the easiest ones to determine when to pick them, because when they turn color, you pick them and you eat them. And with the red cherry tomatoes, you obviously want to get the darkest red ones, nice and ripe. Almost all cherry tomatoes will bear in clusters where the ripening starts closer to the attachment to the plant. So here, this one that's closest to the main stem of the plant is almost ripe, and you can see that as the color changes, these are greener, and these will be ripe in a few weeks. And it is best to break these off there's a little kind of a knuckle, where the stem attaches to, the little individual stem to the fruit attaches to the stem that's coming off the tomato plant. And they'll keep better if you break that off so that this little attachment and the sepals of the flower, which are these little green guys, stay attached. If you break this part off too, sometimes that time it came off cleanly, but sometimes it actually opens up into the tomato and then they'll start to spoil. And the main thing is just picking them often enough when they start to ripen like this, because your really best ripe ones can be way far in here, and then you knock a few off, but that's okay, there's plenty in here. I harvest the tomatoes as they come. Now there are some types of tomatoes that were bred for the entire cluster to ripen at a time, especially what they're calling the cluster tomatoes, the ones you buy in the store. It says on the vine. So again, that's breeding for the whole group, so that you can just clip that whole stem and they'll all be ripe at the same time. But that's generally not the cherry tomatoes. It's the certain type that they call the cluster tomatoes. The paste tomatoes, the ones that we use for making tomato sauce, or just that don't have too much juice inside, they're really meaty. These are in some ways amongst the easiest to pick because they so easily just come right off. But the part that's a little tricky about these is that they need to be really, really ripe. And they tend to turn red on the outside and sometimes stay a little unripe on the inside. So on these, if I think they're ready, I think that they're red, I like to sometimes let them hang on for another day or two till they're really ripe all the way through. This is a San Marzano type that has this kind of pear shape, a little bit of a neck, and sometimes they do this kind of orange thing on top and sometimes they don't. I'm actually not sure what causes that. But again, starting at the top of the cluster here, I would just, like I said, they easily break off, and these stem ends, they come right off pretty easily too. So I just like to look real deep to try to find, because they also ripen down here at the bottom of the plant first, and tried to find the ones that are really, really dark red. And if I accidentally pick one that turns out to be a little bit orange, I'll just let it sit on my counter, for a few days until it turns this really, really deep fire engine red before using it in cooking, because tomatoes will continue to ripen. But of course what we want is that vine ripe flavor, which you're going to only get if they've at least turned pretty fully colored on the plant. This is another type of paste tomato here. This is I think it's called Viva Italia, this variety, that's more round. It doesn't have the little neck in it like the San Marzano types. And these are really good too, and the same principles apply, that you just want to wait until they get really, really red, or when you pick them, if you decide, well, that's still just a little bit orange, these hold really well. So they can just sit on your counter for a few days until you're ready to cook with them. Heirloom tomatoes are a little bit trickier for harvesting for several reasons. One is that they come in different colors, and we don't really know necessarily what color we're looking for. This is a Brandywine here, and it's in the category of pink tomatoes. So usually what we're looking for is this pinky color to be showing here. And sometimes the top will still be a little bit green, or in this case it looks almost white or kind of orange like this one. If you let a lot of these, especially the big heirlooms, get fully ripe on the vine, sometimes they'll split. And they just get so soft on this end that the skin is thin and it just breaks open, and then of course they start to rot. So You don't want to pick it too underripe, and this is the thing about growing your own. You know, they're selling the heirloom tomatoes even at Safeway and Whole Foods and places, and they're picking them green. And you're never going to have that fabulous flavor, which is the whole point of having an heirloom. So, you know, you want to wait until it's pretty close. And this one, I can feel it's a little soft too. And the other thing that's tricky is that you can't just pull these off. A lot of these need to be clipped. And you got to be careful because you're coming in here and it's really easy, like I almost did just now, to accidentally nick that shoulder, which sticks up above where that stem is. So sometimes you just need to leave a little bit more stem so you don't accidentally do that. And then when I set them down in my basket or whatever, I always set them on their shoulders because, again, this end is so tender and they often weigh so much that if you set it this way and it was getting pretty ripe, it could squash or you could get a split here. So I set them down like this to let it finish fully ripen. So this one actually is probably a day or two until it would be perfect. Whereas this Brandywine here, this one was just down another couple of plants, that's got a little bit more of that full, rich color. That was probably, this one would be yummy to eat today. It's kind of a subtle difference, but that's what we're looking for. This is one of the black type tomatoes, and the blacks aren't really black. They can be anything from kind of purpley, browny to kind of this pink color, almost like a Brandywine tomato. And a lot of people think that these are arguably one of the very, very best tasting, and I have to say I like them quite a bit too. They tend to be soft, and when you cut into them inside, that's where you see often that darker color that almost looks like, you know, raw meat or something. And also on the shoulders, they can have that kind of more purpley, bronzy almost color. And I do use my clippers for most of these also. There's a little one called Black Prince that comes off pretty easily, but most of these do need to be clipped as well. This one looks pretty fully ripe. Very characteristic to have this kind of circle and belly button, you know, on the blossom end. Here we have a great example of a true heirloom beefsteak tomato that's fully ripe. This is a striped German. There's several varieties that look kind of like this, like, you know, rainbow or gold medal, or I don't know, there's a few others. But, you know, it's huge. Got two hands here. It's beautiful, but it's beautiful in that ugly way that heirloom tomatoes are. So I'm going to clip this way up here to make sure that I don't accidentally poke it. And it's kind of ribbed on the top, and it's all kind of this funny shape on the bottom. So, you know, there's a fair amount that you're going to have to cut out, but, you know, it's got this beautiful, beautiful bicolor kind of rose red and gold. You know, these are amongst my favorites. So for many people, this, you know, something like this is what growing an heirloom tomato is all about. And this is perfect today. This is exactly the right stage to pick it. It's fully colored, but it still feels firm. And again, if this went another day or two, especially on a warm day, it would definitely crack out here. So this is one where, yeah, you want to say, you need to invite 2 or 3 or 4 people over to enjoy this one.